They kill off the world's rare medicinal plants. They control the only source of healing left, the one they've stockpiled. The threat became personal when the first signs of grey rot appeared on the outer hedges of St. Vincent. The protective limestone seemed to hold it at bay, but the rot was evolving, eating through the very stone that guarded the seeds. "We need a catalyst," Boniface argued, her hands flying over her retorts. "The apostle seeds are the only defense, but they are too slow. We need something to accelerate the indigo's immune response." Chapter 18. The Circle Completed. The solution came from the most unlikely of places. Young Helena, watching the purple vapor rise from the lab, brought a handful of crushed limestone and a small jar of wild honey. "The song and the sweet, sister," Helena said. "The flowers told me. They need to be reminded that they are loved." Boniface paused. Scientifically, the honey was a natural antimicrobial, and the song, she remembered the guardian Julian mentioning the vibration of the earth. She realized that the apostle seeds weren't just chemical, they were resonant. Using a high-frequency transducer to mimic Helena's humming and a refined honey limestone solution, Boniface created a luminous serum. As they sprayed it over the garden, the effect was instantaneous. The indigo flowers didn't just bloom, they glowed with a soft, ethereal light, pushing the grey rot back into the dust. The Ouroboros agents, who had infiltrated the village to witness the fall of St. Vincent's, were captured by Sam's team. They were led by a man who had been Ronnie Panessa's assistant decades ago, man who had inherited the shark's grin but none of his eventual conscience. As the sun rose over a saved garden, Sister Boniface sat with young Helena on the old stone bench. She felt the weight of her years, but for the first time, she didn't feel the burden. "You have the eye," Helena Boniface said softly, handing the girl her own magnifying glass. "Not the one on the box, but the one in here." She touched the girl's forehead. "The foundations are safe, sister," Helena replied, looking at the chapel. Chapter 19. The Silent Witness. The aftermath of the grave rot incident left Great Slaughter in a state of quiet reflection. While the world celebrated the luminous serum, Sister Boniface spent long nights in the archives, accompanied by young Helena. They were searching for the original journals of Sister Helena, the archaeologist, hoping to find the true source of the apostle seeds. One evening, tucked inside the hollowed-out spine of a 16th-century prayer book, Helena's nimble fingers found a hidden compartment. It contained a single, yellowed photograph and a handwritten letter dated 1944. The photograph showed a young Helena standing beside a man in a military uniform. He had a kind, tired face and the unmistakable gaze of a scholar. On the back, it simply said, "For the future of the world. With love, Elias." "Who was he, sister?" Helena asked, her voice hushed. "Elias Thorne," Boniface whispered, the name tasting like old secrets. "He was a botanist during the war. He worked on a secret project to find natural cures for the soldiers. It seems Helena and Elias found the seeds together in the Middle East. They weren't just archaeological artifacts. They were a pact between a soldier and a nun to ensure that healing would always outlast the weapons of war." The letter revealed that Elias had died shortly after the photograph was taken, leaving Helena as the sole guardian of the seeds. She had brought them back to St. Vincent, hiding them behind the Earl's plaque, waiting for a time when science would be advanced enough and hearts would be pure enough to use them correctly. Chapter 20. The Trial of the Centuries. The discovery of Elias Thorne's involvement triggered a new legal challenge. A man claiming to be Elias's great-grandson, Arthur Thorne, filed a lawsuit against the Dutch, claiming ownership of the seeds and all the research derived from them. Arthur Thorne wasn't a scholar. He was a venture capitalist, with a reputation for stripping companies of their assets. The trial took place in a courtroom filled with the people of Great Slaughter. It was a battle between the cold logic of inheritance law and the spiritual weight of a gift given for the common good. Sam Gillespie, now retired but still a formidable presence, sat beside Ruth in the front row. Ruth had been investigating Arthur Thorne's connections and had found a trail of bank accounts leading back to the remnants of Ouroboros. "They aren't just looking for money," Ruth whispered to Sam. "They're looking for a legal way to seize the source. If they win, they don't just own the seeds. They own the right to decide who lives and who dies." Sister Boniface was called to the stand. She looked fragile in her habit, but her voice was a pillar of fire. "Mr. Thorne," she said, looking directly at Arthur. "You speak of bloodlines and documents, but the seeds do not recognize a signature. They recognize a soul. They failed to bloom for the shark, and they withered for the greed of Apex. They only bloomed when they are shared. The turning point came when young Helena was called as a special witness regarding the resonant science. She brought with her the small jar of honey and limestone. She explained the song of the earth with a clarity that silenced the room. The judge, a man who had seen too much greed in his long career, made his ruling. The seeds belonged to no man. They belonged to the sanctuary that preserved them. Arthur Thorne's claim is dismissed. Chapter 21. The Final Bloom. The victory in the courtroom was celebrated with a quiet prayer in the garden. But as the seasons turned, a new phenomenon occurred. The indigo flowers began to change color. They were turning a deep, radiant gold, the color of the final bloom described in the ancient prophecies Helena had translated. The scent was no longer just ozone and honey. It was the fragrance of every memory of great slaughter, the damp mist, the wax of the candles, and the laughter of the children. "It's time, Boniface," Reverend Mother Adrian said, standing beside her in the laboratory. "The seeds have completed their journey. They're giving back everything they have stored for 500 years. The final bloom released a fine, golden pollen that drifted over the entire valley. It wasn't a cure for a single disease. It was a strengthening of the spirit. People who had been at odds for decades found themselves reconciled. The bitterness that had clung to the Sedgwick name finally dissolved. Even Matthew Sedgwick, now released and working quietly in the convent gardens, felt the shift. He stood among the golden petals, a man who had finally found his home. Chapter 22. The Heart Unveiled. Sister Boniface sat at her desk, finishing the final entry in her laboratory log. She was 90 years old, and her eyes were tired, but her heart was light. Young Helena, now a graduate of Oxford and a renowned scientist in her own right, stood behind her hands on the old nun's shoulders. "The secret wasn't in the chemistry, was it, sister?" Helena asked. "The chemistry was only the language," dear Boniface replied. "The secret was the love. Helena, and Elias, Sam, and Ruth, the town, and the convent. We're all part of the same stone, and the stone is finally transparent." As the sun set on the quincentennial +1, the bells of St. Vincent's began to toll. It was a sound that didn't just stay in the valley. It seemed to resonate through time itself. Ruth and Sam sat on their porch, watching the golden mist settle over the hills. They were old now, their hands intertwined, a testament to a love that had survived every storm. "It's a beautiful story, Sam," Ruth whispered. "It's the only story, Ruth," Sam replied. In the laboratory, the light finally went out, but the garden continued to glow, a vibrant, eternal, indigo gold, waiting for the next generation to hear the song. Great Slaughter was more than a village. It was a sanctuary where the past and the future had finally, and forever, become one. Chapter 23. The Modern Sentinel. 5 years after Sister Boniface's peaceful passing, Helena Gillespie had fully assumed leadership of the Boniface Institute. At 25, she was a bridge between two worlds: the ancient, silent halls of St. Vincent's and the frantic, digital noise of the 21st century. The Golden Pollen event had changed everything. The Institute was no longer a village secret. It was a global landmark. Yet, with fame came a more insidious kind of shadow. No longer were the threats just men in suits or corporate sharks. There were digital ghost algorithms designed to crack the genetic code of the apostasy through remote sensing, and "They're probing the perimeter again, Superintendent Livingston," Helena said, her eyes fixed on a glowing monitor in the updated lab. Felix, now gray-haired, but still sharp, stood behind her. Not the stone walls, but the data servers. "Someone is trying to synthesize the resonant frequency." "It's Ouroboros," Felix replied, his voice a low growl. "They've evolved into a decentralized network. They don't want the seeds anymore, Helena. They want the song that makes them work." Helena looked out at the garden. The indigo gold flowers were quiet, their leaves shimmering in the twilight. She felt a strange vibration in her chest, a low hum that she had felt since she was a child. It wasn't a frequency you could record. It was a frequency you had to live. Chapter 24. The Digital Eye. The attack came at 3 a.m., the hour of the wool. A massive cyber surge targeted the Institute's cooling systems and the garden's automated misting units. If the temperature rose too high, the delicate resonant balance of the apostle seeds would be shattered forever. As the technicians scrambled to restore the firewalls, Helena did something that shocked them all. She grabbed a simple wooden staff, the one Julian had left behind, walked into the dark garden. "Helena, get back inside," her father, Sam, called out. He was frail now, leaning on a cane, but the fire of a policeman still burned in his eye.